So we come to the middleweights, middleweight boxing history. So it starts with the Irish-born Jack Dempsey, the non-apparel, not the Jack to be muddled up with a heavyweight Jack Dempsey. His place in boxing, he bridged between the bare knuckle and the modern era. He was accepted as champion at the weight of 154 pounds, with his win over Billy McCarthy, an English-born but Australian-based fighter, and it was the first international contest in the division. Dempsey was dethroned by Bob Fitzsimmons, English, lived in New Zealand, but English-born Bob Fitzsimmons, Houston, Cornwall way, who, in keeping with practice of the time, named a new weight limit of 158, since he could no longer make 154. The limit crept up to the modern 160 stages. It was first accepted in Europe and France, hosted a series of famous middleweight matches in the first years, immediately before the First World War, but America did not adopt the new poundage until 1921. It's quite surprising. The middleweight has produced many champions. Brilliant. So, go straight in. So, here we go. Yes. So we got February the 3rd, 1986. The non-apparel Jack Dempsey from Ireland wins by KO in the 27th round against Jack Fogarty in New York. And then we got March the 4th, 1986. Non-apparel Jack Dempsey wins by KO in the 13th round against Jean Larchmont. Something to do with the pivot punch there, which is like a back fist. But I know it was banned after this, when they fought George LeBlanc and Jack Dempsey. One of them used it. December the 13th, 1987, non-apparel Jack Dempsey wins by KO in the 15th round against Johnny Regan from the US in Long Island. February 18th, 1990, non-apparel Jack Dempsey wins in the 28th round. The referee stops the fight against Billy McCarthy from Australia in San Francisco. And then January the 14th, 1891, Bob Fitzsimmons from England wins by KO in the 12th round against the non-apparel Jack Dempsey in New Orleans. Again, he would become three-time weight champion, Bob Fitzsimmons, and there wasn't that many weight divisions around. So the 26th of September 1894, Bob Fitzsimmons wins in the second round against Dan Creedon from New Zealand. Bob Fitzsimmons also lived in New Zealand at some point, but again I digress. And that was in New Orleans here. So Fitzsimmons gave up the title to pursue the heavyweight championship and establish a solid claim to the title by beating welterweight champion Tommy Ryan. Tommy Ryan later trained James J. Jeffries. He was known for his crouch and his style, and he trained that into James J. Jeffries. March the 2nd, 1896, Kid McCoy wins in the 15th round by KO against Tommy Ryan of the US in Long Island. And then May the 18th, 1896, Kid McCoy wins by disqualification against mysterious Billy Smith from the US. He was a Barbados Walcott opponent at the welters. But again, that was in Boston, Massachusetts. December the 26th, on Boxing Day, 1896, Kid McCoy wins in the 9th round against Billy Doherty from Australia by KO in Johannesburg, South Africa. December the 17th, 1897, Kid McCoy wins the 15th round against Dan Creedon in Long Island. And Dan Creedon gained recognition in England as the world champion, and McCoy subsequently relinquished the title, which was claimed by Tommy Ryan. October the 24th, 1898, Tommy Ryan wins on points over 20 rounds against Jack Bonner from the US in Coney Island. And August 31st, 1899, Tommy Ryan wins on points over 20 rounds against Jack Moffat from the US in WQ. So, March the 4th, 1901, Tommy Ryan wins in the 17th round by retirement against Tommy West from the US in Louisville, Kentucky. June the 24th, 1902, Tommy Ryan wins in the 3rd round by KO against Johnny Gorman in the US. It was in London, England. September the 18th, 1902, Tommy Ryan wins in the 6th round by KO against Kid Carter, Jack Johnson sparring partner from the US. Tommy Ryan beats him in the 6th round by KO in Fort Erie, Canada. Ryan retired, and once more confusion reigned. Hugo Kelly and Jack Twin Sullivan and Stanley Ketchel and Billy Papke all claimed the title. Ketchel's win over the three established him as the rightful champion. And again, Jack Twin Sullivan had a brother, Mike. Was known they switched rounds. You didn't know which one was fighting sometimes. Some of the stories. But again, so May the 9th, 1908, Stanley Ketchel from the US wins by KO against Jack Twin Sullivan from the US in Colma. June the 4th, 1908, Stanley Ketchel wins on points against Billy Papke over 10 rounds in Milwaukee. July the 31st, 1908, Stanley Ketchel wins in the 3rd round by KO against Hugo Kelly in San Francisco. Now, June the 26th, 1908, Stanley Ketchel wins the 11th round by KO against Billy Papke in Colma. July the 5th, 1909, Stanley Ketchel wins again against Billy Papke by over 20 rounds this time in Colma. January 10th, Ketchel announced that he no longer could make the weight. Then it was 158 poundage. And Papke and Willie Lewis were matched for the vacant title. So March the 19th, 1910, Billy Papke wins by KO against Willie Lewis in the US in Paris, France. Now, March 1910, Ketchel reclaimed the title. He come back, and it was May 27th, 1910. Stanley Ketchel wins in the second round against Willie Lewis by KO. Then, so Ketchel was shot, and Papke reclaimed the title. Various claimants emerged over the next couple of years, including Frank Mantle, Frank Klaus, and Georges Carpentier from France. But Papke's claim was generally regarded as the strongest. He was shot in the back by a guy called Walter Dibley over a jealous farmhand over his girlfriend, something like that. Different stories. But again, I digress. So, June the 8th, 1911, Billy Papke wins in the 9th round by retirement against Jim Sullivan of England in London, England. Then, June 29th, 1912, Billy Papke wins in the 6th round. Referee stops the fight against Marcel Moreau of France in Paris, France. Then December the 4th, 1912, Billy Papke wins in the 7th round by retirement over George Bernard for France in France, Paris, France. So he reigned for a while after Stanley Ketchel was shot at 23 years old. So Ketchel went up to fight Jack Johnson for the heavyweight title, and he was meant to take Ketchel a few rounds. Then Ketchel come out and caught Jack Johnson with an overhand right, stuck him down. Jack Johnson got up and stuck him down straight away, wiping the teeth of his blood, the teeth of his gloves even. But again, we're back to the middleweights here. So March the 5th, 1913, Frank Klaus wins by disqualification in the 15th round against Billy Papke in Paris, France. He was a rough old fighter, as was Ketchel and Papke. October 11th, 1913, George Chip from the US wins by KO in the 6th round against Frank Klaus in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. In December 23rd, 1913, George Chip wins in the 5th round against Frank Klaus by KO in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. With these two wins over Klaus, Chip earned recognition in America as the champion, even though he had been over the division limit on each occasion. He's still regarded as a champion. Meanwhile, the Australians set their own version of the title. So we've got the Australian version next. It's an interesting come about there. So, yes, so we've got all these are in Sydney, apart from one. Okay. So we've got January the 1st, 1914. January the 1st, 1914. New Year's Day, Eddie Maguti wins by KO in the 1st round against Dave Smith of the US. And that was in Sydney, Australia, as of all of them apart from one of these. Then February the 7th, 1914, Eddie Maguti wins on points over 20 rounds against Pat Bradley from Australia in Sydney, Australia, I guess. March 14th, 1914, Jeff Smith wins over 20 rounds on points against Eddie Maguti in Sydney, Australia. And then April the 13th, 1914, Jeff Smith wins by KO in the 16th round against Pat Bradley in Melbourne, Australia. And then June 6th, 1914, Jeff Smith wins on points over 20 rounds against Jimmy Clabby from the US on points in Melbourne, Australia. And then Mick Ward, this is the one, Mick Ward. So yeah, December 26th, 1914, Jeff Smith wins on points over 20 rounds over Mick King, shall I say, not Mick Ward, in Sydney, Australia. And then January 23rd, 1915, Jeff Smith wins by disqualification against Les Darcy from Australia, in Sydney, Australia. And then here we go. So here's the only one that's different place. February 20th, 1915, Jeff Smith wins on points over Mick Young, over 20 rounds on points, Mick Young. And this one was in Melbourne, Australia. All the rest are in Sydney. Bang, we'll come back on that.